Today, I'm joined by Kari Niblack, president of Boon-Chapman, which is one of the largest standing independent third-party administrators. Kari is a licensed attorney, longtime self-insurance executive whose career has spanned everything from claims administration to care navigation. Kari, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Angel, for having me. I'm a big fan, so delighted to be with you this morning.
So I'd love to start talking a little bit about your origins and your career. You were previously at Blackwell before this, and then now moved over to Boon-Chapman. What problem did you think that you could solve from the larger TPA side that you couldn't solve from the captive side?
So it wasn't an opportunity to replace Boon-Chapman. It was rather an opportunity to build on that legacy and that foundation and position the company for what's next. So it was, a very exciting opportunity to continue my vision for the industry and really, really combine that human touch with technology in every single thing we do within an ecosystem.
The role of a TPA is ever changing, and you've often said that self-funded plans can't afford to have passive healthcare administration. So what do you think has to change about TPAs heading into the next decade for those that are going to be leading the industry?
Yeah, I love that question. So leading a top performing TPA in 2026 and beyond isn't about claims adjudication. That's a given. That is commoditized. That's just something that you have to do. What it's really about is becoming a strategic partner rather than simply that claims processor. So integrating every single step of the digital process, the communication process, of the solution, and then being able to tell that story. So using data analytics to say, client ABC, this is how your plan is performing. These are our recommendations, not reactively, but proactively. So if you think about if a client renews on 1/1, we should be having those conversations in first quarter, second quarter, and preparing those folks for any recommended changes to take place for that 1/1 renewal at least 6 months in advance if you're doing it right. The other thing is I've been looking at data analytics for 30 years. You start to see patterns, and those patterns, the numbers tell a story, and those patterns allow for the consultative approach to recommend strategies that change and migrate those patterns we're seeing in cost.
And so on that personal and highly customized approach, is AI helping you guys at all in that implementation? I know one of the things that has been a huge unlock for large language models is the ability to have something be very sort of customized towards a given person, right? And I know that Boon-Chapman is already using AI in customer service to reduce handoffs, provide more accurate answers. So can you talk about what workflows that you guys have live today and how you're measuring whether those work?
Yes, so one of the first things I did for innovation was create a digital footprint through partnerships. Within that digital footprint, we wanted the ability to move information at fingertips very, very quickly for all ages and all backgrounds in the membership. So one of the things that we really, really combined was that advanced technology, certainly involving AI, as you mentioned, to make us move quicker, to allow the different tools to come into play, but really combine that with the genuine consultative expertise and exceptional service for a comprehensive package, a comprehensive answer to a question, improving our ability to get to the end answer much more quickly by pre-filling some information at the top. But what's really important about that differentiation is still, I'm going to come back to that human element. So even as that technology automates, healthcare is deeply personal, deeply personal. So our members are going to remember if we help them navigate a difficult diagnosis or we help them resolve a complex claim. At its core, though, it's combining that with the human element to get to the ultimate answer.
So where do you actually draw the line there, right? Because obviously as AI is able to do things like answering members' questions, having a massive impact into claims administration, payment integrity, utilization management, where do you actually draw the line between where automation should stop and where human judgment should come in? Is there like a certain point in time in which you're saying, we're comfortable with the AI answering these questions, but not these questions? How are you thinking about that?
I am the person in charge of our legal and compliance as well as being the visionary of the company. We'd love to have you in for coffee and talk about this because this is a daily question about I'm the regulator, I'm the compliance guru as well as the visionary, and that's an interesting balance day to day. So we've been this Interesting combination of progressive yet conservative in that pre-filling information when a call comes in, being, analytics and formatting those using technology to create a very polished end product. What you didn't hear me say there was AI is giving answers on its own to complex human problems involving care. So on a daily basis have to balance being very progressive with moving things at a rapid speed, but at the same time, we have our own care navigation in-house, one of the few TPAs that still do. We do not outsource that. That's led by a gem of a person who you know, Kimberly Langford, the best in the business. Our job is to let her move quicker, but not to replace 35 years of nursing experience she brings to that role or her team.
So yeah, that's actually one question I did want to push on you there. So is it a question of the technology not being good enough as to why, or is it more about the actual human touch itself and being able to have a human connect to another patient when it comes to something like care navigation, for example?
It's definitely the second. It's not that the technology isn't good enough. Like, I'm learning every day. I'm an old girl, old school. So AI has been. I mean, I remember the first time that I saw AI. And I was just amazed, right, at the things that we used to do manually, 25, 30 years ago. So, I was very intrigued with the speed of it. At the same time, if I'm honest, I was a little bit scared, right? Because there's that fine line between, again, that technology and then going what I consider personally over the threshold of, now we're using it too much. And we're replacing what has always distinguished my career, no matter what organization I've been in, and that is that very personal touch, that human element that I don't think technology gives us.
I mean, I love that because I think you start to run into a lot of questions around, all right, well, if AI is making care navigation decisions, who
Mhm.
takes the accountability when AI makes the wrong decision, right? Is that
Exactly.
is that the employer? Is that the TPA? Is that the vendor that you're partnered with? So I'm curious around how you're thinking around accountability around these sort of like AI decisions as it's becoming more influenced in how we're doing our work.
There's 100% accountability for anyone who uses it, and that you have to know where that should stop and the human element should come into play, combined with the technology. I'll give you a very how far we use technology for things like writing plan documents, because every time you change a word, which can change a meeting, and if we're taking an employer's overall umbrella of risk in that stop loss solution and we didn't have a human element to plan document finalization and stop loss policy review, that's frightening when you're talking about a $5 million claim.
So I wanna switch topics a little bit and talk about Boon-Chapman. I know that over the past year, you guys have expanded your partnerships pretty widely, everything from obesity and GLP-1 management to MSK care, complex care referrals. What's your end state here? Are you trying to assemble sort of like a marketplace of point solutions? Are you trying to redesign a TPA into this sort of active performance manager? What's your goal with Boon-Chapman?
It's actually the latter. So yes, I've been a busy girl, and thank you for following us and noticing it's been a rapid amount of change in 2 years, very purposeful on my part. And so it's very much the latter. We really have a vision to redesign a TPA into an active health plan performance manager. So it's really, I see our role as an integrator and a strategist. So a TPA should sit in the center of the access to data, of the claims, of the performance, of here comes the human element again, of that member journey. And it really gives us the unique ability to connect those dots across the clinical programs, the navigation, the care management, cost containment. So our job isn't to offer every point solution on the market. Rather, it's to build that ecosystem where the right member gets the right solution at the right time, and where those solutions work together instead of operating in silos.
And when you're thinking about change management in such a large TPA, especially one that's been around for so long, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing trying to transition this TPA into the 2026 era?
One of the things that's absolutely wonderful and a blessing when you come in to lead a 60, now 65-year-old company, if you're smart with that, you don't come in to change what made you so successful for that long of a period of time. You don't come in to change the foundation. So Boon-Chapman is this wonderful car. I'm gonna talk about a car that's no longer here, but you'll get my analogy. Sort of type of car. You know, Oldsmobiles, of the like the 1970s, 80s. I was a GM kid, so my dad would appreciate that. They were very reliable. They were affordable. They were still a little bit sexy, right? Back in the day. They had great motors. They had V8s. Uh, so when I come into Boon-Chapman, I look at it as this, it's not your father's Oldsmobile. It's this great Oldsmobile, but in 2026, or when I came in 2024, so it's kept everybody safe. It has this great track record. But it needed a new engine, needed a new coat of paint, it needed some new cool tires and a new sound system, so it needs some bling. So what I have loved about this opportunity that was presented for me is exactly that, is taking that foundation that we've had for 65 years and now making it the biggest, baddest car coming down the street where you stop and you go, "Man, I wanna drive that," or "What's that?"
And so you have talked a lot about quote unquote sending the elevator back down. So you've done years of mentoring and coaching for women and emerging executives. Do you have any women in your career that did the same for you? And what impact did that have on your career trajectory?
Yes. Actually, I have been so fortunate. I had both men and women who sent the elevator back down for me, who gave me opportunities technically before I was really ready, but they saw something in me and they challenged me. And what I try and impart to my mentees and younger folks is always take that call, always leap. And it may scare you to death, but trust me, the net will find you.
Have you felt any moment where you are feeling this imposter syndrome or that you're facing a double standard essentially?
No, I've never felt the imposter syndrome. I'm a blue collar kid that was raised hard work. Here's the situation. Here are the set of facts. I'll figure it out. And certainly my professional training as an attorney lends to that as well. So I'm confident. I have this a great ability. One of my greatest strengths and what my employees like is you can give me any set of facts very quickly. I know where we're going to go. And then one of the mentors that is so important to me, actually a gentleman, he said to me once, you have such a great ability to make decisions quickly. But what's happening is you make them so quickly, your folks aren't on the same pace as you, and you lose them in that process in high leadership positions. I would say, "Okay, here's the problem, here's what we're gonna do." And then I quit talking. And he said to me, your solution's right. That here's what we're gonna do is right. What you need to do is say, "Okay, here's a set of facts. Now here's one thing we need to consider. And here's what we're gonna do," but involve them in that middle part of that conversation. And I will very self-admittedly say to you, when he first said that to me, I was like, "That's crazy," right? But then I reflected and I took a step back and I got a little bit older, and I would tell you that is some of the best advice I have ever been given, and I changed the process with which I make decisions. Indecision doesn't change, still very quick, but I deliberately changed from a mentoring standpoint, from a visionary standpoint, how I communicate A to B, and it made me a better CEO.
I might have to steal that advice.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Awesome. Are you up for a quick fire round?
I am up for a quick fire round.
What are you unusually competitive outside of work?
My gosh, so I am a competitive backgammon player, a pro backgammon player. So I am highly competitive about that. I love racing. But right now, tonight, Angel, I am playing in a professional backgammon tournament where my first opponent is someone from Brazil. And what I love about back, it's just like leading a company. It's a little bit of skill, luck, vision, all moving very rapidly. It's very similar to running a company.
You're an athlete. What sports are you most emotionally invested in?
I love racing, but as an athlete, I actually played basketball and I was a fast pitch softball player. What I loved about basketball, and this won't surprise you, is I was the point guard and the captain of the team. Shocking. And I was never quick. I've never been that girl, but I could drain a 3-pointer and I could see the court and know where the ball needed to be. And again, that's a skill very early on that translates into, again, knowing what we should do as a next step for a company and leadership.
What category of point solutions should employers stop purchasing as a standalone product?
Well, I would tell you that they should stop purchasing everything as just a standalone product because here's how that happens. I want to purchase a standalone product for obesity and weight management, GLP-1. Okay, but that's great. And if you purchase that standalone product, what happens with the adherence to the program? What happens with how that integrates with whole body health, muscle loss? I would tell you very confidently as a whole, we need to get away from that silo thinking of this is the silver bullet because there is no silver bullet for an individual product solution.
What do you think in the next 5 years that a TPA will no longer be paid to do?
We will no longer be focused at all on just claims processing. That's already happening today, but that will be just an element that is it's not obsolete that we have to do the work and that it's important that we do it at 100% accuracy in a very quick time frame. That will never go away. What will be the forefront of the conversation is how do you continue to combine advanced technology for speed without losing the member in the process. And that again is a very, very slippery slope with our industry, with every type of point solution, with the integration of AI.
Kari, this was so fun. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's an amazing podcast.
I had an absolute blast visiting with you. You are one of my favorite people. Your passion, your desire to make everything better in the industry, and certainly from a personal friendship standpoint, you're one of my favorite people. It's been a pleasure visiting with you. I look forward to seeing you in Nashville and keep doing what you're doing. It's so important for the industry.